Aloha.
Aloha, everybody.
That's Jim Kimmel. Not to be confused with Jim Kimmel, who's on late night television. Although sometimes you'll see this Jim Kimmel on late night television.
I would love to get on Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Jimmy Kimmel Live, coming soon to a theater near you. That will be fun to see. And actually, that's something you may be fun to see. In fact, I think you should ask Jimmy Kimmel, the other guy, and we'll see, because that may be coming.
That would be fun.
But this is Jimmy Kimmel, Reverend James Kimmel. From where do you live? In Kula, right?
Lower Kula.
Kula, Maui, Hawaii. Now, we have been doing shows, different questions and answers about the Urantia book, from the Urantia book. I stopped counting, but then today you just reminded me, we're up to number 11. 11. Every time I put on a new shirt, I keep thinking, I hope you know that we've been doing a lot of original shows, and we're doing this so that there'll be a lot of information out there so that you, the public, can get enough information and be reaching out to see what the Urantia book's about and have questions and answers and opinions so we can do a live call-in talk show. So I'm Jason Schwartz, this is Jim Kimmel, Reverend James Kimmel, who's been doing a Urantia book for a long time. You've been reading, but I thought, and I still think, that by doing it in this kind of way, we kind of get closer to different subjects and stuff. The book has a lot of things that are controversial, and the biggest and most controversial is probably, in my opinion, that we all need to be aware that there's a fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man.
Mm-hmm.
And that simple truth brought us to today's question from me, which was really about the simple truth. I've been looking at what is it that makes something happen. And self-confidence is a big issue, and self-love. But we were referencing in the book here, and this passage is called The Bestowal of the Spirit of Truth. You know, the Spirit of Truth. I guess you can tell me a lot about the Spirit of Truth. Is there a way to get your grips on what that means, the Spirit of Truth?
The Spirit of Truth is the living spiritual presence of the Prince of Peace. Not the personality, the presence, the spiritual presence. And this spiritual presence, the Spirit of Truth and idealistic beauty enshrouds our soul.
So it's around our body.
Just like when we were in our mother's womb, we were enshrouded by her womb.
So our whole universe is immersed, or I guess not bombarded, is fully present with this, or the presence of the Spirit of Truth indwells in all that is?
Not all that is. All of the people of the world who have made their very first moral decision.
Oh, okay.
Before they have made their very first moral decision, the Spirit of Truth comes and helps make their mind ready to receive the great gift from God Himself, which is a fragment of His will. It's like, if you can dig that God is an infinite person, an infinite spiritual person, and He has the equivalent of what we have as males. We have sperm that has to do with the reproduction of new beings.
Okay.
Well, God has fragments of His will that comes to each of us when we make our very first moral free will decision when we're about just a little bit short of 6 years old, probably, somewhere between 5 and 6. As a child, we make our first moral choice, and from that point on, the soul, that's what marks the birth of the soul, is the coming of the fragment of the will of God that impregnates the mind. Our mind is like the womb, and the soul is the embryo growing within the womb in response to our motherly input. We as men or women, we are the mothers of our soul. regardless of physical sex.
Okay.
We are all the mothers of the soul because we are all the person. Each person makes their very first free will choice. That marks the creation of a new being. A whole new creature is born.
Okay.
In the mind, the womb of the person.
So once that being, or that person, makes a moral decision, that's the point of creation.
Of the soul. The beginning of that's the birth of the soul. And the soul is enshrouded in the spirit of truth from beginning to end.
So, I don't know how that fits in. I don't know if it fits in Christianity, it fits in Islam,
it's
in
beyond.
Hinduism.
It's a new revelation.
Okay.
It's a new revelation. Just like when Jesus came, he was nothing but revelation. he revealed truth and love everywhere he went. And it was way beyond the standards in the language of the people of his day. It was an upgrade, so to speak.
Upgrade.
And so...
How come we're driving rusty old cars and we had that upgrade then? Well, what paper were you picking here?
Well, the spirit of truth has to do with the confidence, self-confidence. You were talking about self-confidence.
Yeah, I wanted to see how the spirit of truth goes with self-confidence. Well, I thought that would be a good subject.
Let's see how the spirit of truth goes with each
that.
person now, because this is extremely important in answer to your question.
Okay.
And this took place on Thursday evening, May 18th in the year 30. All right?
Okay.
Thursday afternoon, about 1 o'clock, as the 120 believers were engaged in prayer, they all became aware of a strange presence in the room. At the same time, these disciples all became conscious of a new and profound sense of spiritual joy, security, and confidence. This new consciousness of spiritual strength was immediately followed by a strong urge to go out and publicly proclaim the gospel of the kingdom and the good news that Jesus had risen from the dead. Peter stood up and declared that this must be the coming of the Spirit of truth which the Master had promised them, and proposed that they go to the temple and begin the proclamation of the good news committed to their hands. And they did just what Peter suggested. Now, these men had been trained and instructed that the gospel which they should preach was the fatherhood of God and the sonship of man. But at just this moment of spiritual ecstasy and personal triumph, the best tidings, the greatest news these men could think of was the fact of the risen Master. Blew their minds, naturally. And so they went forth, endowed with power from on high, preaching glad tidings to the people, even salvation through Jesus. But they unintentionally stumbled into the error of substituting some of the facts associated with the gospel for the gospel message itself.
Let's, for a moment, pause there. So that what you're basically saying there is that
They unintentionally stumbled.
Made
an evil choice.
A choice that has created a misunderstanding with people.
Because it's an evil choice. See,
because it's not truthful.
It's not fact. It's not a fact. Peter unwittingly led off in this mistake, and others followed after him on down to Paul, who created a new religion out of the new version of the good news. There's two changes now already.
Wow.
From the original gospel. The gospel of the kingdom is the fact of the fatherhood of God.
Ah. Period.
It's the most basic fact of all creation. The sovereignty of God is the fundamental fact of all creation.
What does that mean, the fatherhood of God?
It means exactly what it says. God is our Father, spiritually.
Okay.
Even as we are our mother.
So what did it get translated to in the first incarnation and then the second here?
Well, let me see now.
Okay. So Peter went out and and created his own church, taking the gospel and taking some truth and twisting some.
Well, the fact of the resurrection was substituted for the fact of the fatherhood of God. You ever heard that in the Christian message?
No, I
Never heard the fatherhood of God.
So they focused on the fact that this guy got reawakened rather than focusing on the message that he came to bring.
Yeah.
So we've been celebrating that he himself was a deity rather than proclamation of his message, which was the most important piece.
Exactly.
That is huge. That's like the basis for wow.
Understanding divided Christianity.
Wow.
Basically. The gospel of the kingdom is the fact of the fatherhood of God coupled with the resultant truth of the sonship brotherhood of men.
What a difference in the way the world goes. Maybe that's what this new age is about, is that we start to recognize the fatherhood of God and the sonship and brotherhood of man.
Well, the kingdom of God is at hand.
Is that why you've been Peace Inc. all these years? Peace Inc. at Maui.net.
Yeah.
You've been on this path a long
A
time.
long time.
Peace.
44 years.
Wow. Please continue.
Christianity,
Heard of it.
as it developed from that day, is the fact of God as the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ in association with the experience of believer fellowship with the risen and glorified Christ. It is not strange that these spirit-infused men should have seized upon this opportunity to express their feelings of triumph over the forces which had sought to destroy their master and end the influence of his teachings. At such a time as this, it was easier to remember their personal association with Jesus and to be thrilled with the assurance that the Master still lived, that their friendship had not ended, and that the Spirit had indeed come upon them, even as he had promised, the Spirit of truth. These believers felt themselves suddenly translated into another world, a new existence of joy, power, and glory. The Master had told them the kingdom would come with power, and some of them thought they were beginning to discern what he meant.
Well, that's very interesting. It's like the Spirit of Truth feels like a coating.
Yeah.
Setting.
You feel it with your soul. You feel the Spirit of Truth with your soul. You recognize it with your mind.
And the recognition of the Spirit of Truth with your mind, with what you feel from your soul, is the basis of self-confidence.
Absolutely.
Focusing on the Spirit of Truth.
As a son of God, you have every right to have infinite, supreme self, maximum possible finite confidence. Is supreme confidence. And as fellow sons and daughters of God, hey, we should all have supreme respect and supreme confidence for ourselves and our neighbors as ourselves.
Which means, if you feel it, go at it and you can do it. That's what it means.
Yeah, yeah. And when all of this is taken into consideration, it is not difficult to understand how these men came to preach a new gospel about Jesus in the place of their former message of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of men.
I mean, that is so huge. I hope you all catch I'm sure you do, the power of that difference is the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. If we all got that message instead of about the life of this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a gigantic difference. Okay.
Well, that was all there was to that section on
wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, very.
When we're going and talking about the Spirit of Truth and the way things are in the world, and often you've talked about the truth and the reality of the Kingdom of Hawaii, and how this could be the seat of the Kingdom of Heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is important for our audience to know as far as that link? Because
Well,
I can hear, in some of the things that you're talking about that are going on,
mm-hmm.
this desire to reach out to really ground the Kingdom of Hawaii in this world, to somehow make it possible for the Kingdom of Hawaii to exist. I don't know exactly how. Does the Urantia book talk in reference to what and how to make that event possible here?
Yeah, yes, here. Mm-hmm. It, in association with some other important information and documents, such as the Queen's story. Hawaii's story by Hawaii's Queen, Liliuokalani, is a must-read to understand how Hawaii came to be part of the United States.
Okay.
And it was in that book I discovered the skeleton in the closet that my great-grandfather-in-law was the first Harvard-trained lawyer to be the Attorney General for the Kingdom of Hawaii under the Kamehameha back in the 1860s, I think it was.
He was the Attorney General for the King.
In the 1860s, and so he was the first.
And so, where's the skeleton there?
Well, that was in the 1860s, but when Hawaii was overthrown in 1893, and at that point in time, from what I read in the Queen's story, I would never have known if I hadn't read the Queen's story.
Right.
About this phenomenal fact in my life, and
That he was part of your heritage?
yeah, well, my wife from 1957, I got married in Honolulu, and my wife's mama was related to this person, and they didn't. Nobody ever knew about how the kingdom was overthrown. It was like nobody knew how it came to be part of the U.S. It just happened. My children's grandma was 5 years old growing up on the Molokai Ranch, where her dad was the manager, and he was the son of A.S. Hartwell, who's the person the Queen revealed as the lawyer that drew up the papers of abdication she was forced to sign under threat of bloodshed.
Wow.
Now that wasn't a pleasant discovery.
No, it wasn't.
I'm saying, but it gave me absolutely perfect and good cause to become immediately involved in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement that was just beginning to come into active existence in those days on Kauai. It was in January of '73.
Wow.
And I figured this is, I've got to do anything and everything I can to make this wrong of the past right in today's world.
I always wonder, how do you get the Kingdom of Hawaii here, and what happens with all the buildings and the people and their property and their ownership and all that stuff?
Everything having to do with the outworking of the will of God is all positive and all for the benefit of everybody, so there's no reason to fear anything other than, there's no reason to fear anything, except you get fear as a consequence of thinking thoughts that are not true or are true and they're not good thoughts.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. In other words, why do the sovereignty of the nation of Hawaii, it had physical land, all this land.
The whole kingdom, the whole so-called state of Hawaii,
Right.
used to be the kingdom of Hawaii that came into existence in the 1700s in terms of a constitution. And one of my other relatives in law was responsible for helping create the Constitution of 1841. Anyhow, I discovered that G.P. Judd, also through my marriage to my children's mother, was directly related to G.P. Judd, Dr. Garrett P. Judd. And the Judd family is an old family in Hawaii, and all these people that I'd heard names of all of a sudden took on new meanings as a consequence of reading the Queen's story.
I see.
Big time.
Wow.
I mean, I was, wow, you know, this is how Hawaii came to be part of the United States. I can't, you know, because all I could do is, wow, you know,
I
I've got to
understand.
do everything I can to make this wrong right.
Well, it's an interesting quest, because it's so many years after that fact, and so much development has happened. I don't know how that process would happen.
Well, another relation now, current times, or almost current times. Do you remember the name Samuel P. King?
Yes.
Judge? Sam King was the chief district of Hawaii judge in the federal court.
Okay.
I kind of like to call him King Sam. He really considered himself to be king of Hawaii. Now, I just happened to end up in his courtroom one time back in whatever it was, 73 or 4 or 5, I just don't remember anymore. But I had gotten ensnared in a conspiracy that was created by the DEA, and I found myself ultimately in front of Judge King. And as my defense for this crime, I asked the court to take judicial notice of 26 points of fact. And the first one was the fact that the Kingdom of Hawaii existed as an independent nation with treaties with other nations at 1890.
Okay.
That on on January 17th, 1893, as a result of a coup d'etat, the Kingdom of Hawaii was overthrown. A conspiracy of American troops and forces and other friendly conspirators, so to speak, overthrew the Kingdom of Hawaii. And this man, A.S. Hartwell, who drew up the papers of abdication the Queen was forced to sign, I asked the court to take judicial notice of the fact that Queen Liliuokalani was the lawful monarch of the Kingdom of Hawaii, and she had to abdicate the throne under threat of bloodshed. And the lawyer that drew up the papers of abdication was my children's great-great-grandfather.
Right.
And Judge King says, he comes sitting up on his chair, how are you related to this man? As well, I married a lady named Cordy Weissard back in the 50s, and her mama used to be known as Martha Hartwell. And her dad was Charles Hartwell. And his dad was A.S. Hartwell, the Queen referred to. Oh, he said, I'm related to the same person.
Is that what he said?
The judge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, wow, you know, we were both stunned at this discovery. And I'm thinking to myself, should I ask the judge to recuse himself? Or now that he knows we're kind of related, maybe he'll cut me some slack.
That's funny.
So I figured, well, I'll roll, I'll cut the slack. We come to an arrangement well, pretty soon he called it recess. And we went up to his chambers in the top of the federal building. There's this, he had the top of the eagle's nest, so to speak.
Wow.
In full 360 view, downtown Honolulu. Him and I are in his chambers discussing the seriousness of the charges that he knew I got ensnared in the conspiracy they created.
He knew.
He knew. And so I told him, well, I appreciate the fact that by your views, that was a very serious thing. But at the same time, I'm just as serious that you don't have any jurisdiction here because you didn't get Hawaii lawfully. You didn't get Hawaii righteously. And our relative had a big hand in the overthrow of this kingdom. Therefore, Your Honor, you're also equally involved in a major crime. So like, I didn't ask to get this information or this product you folks wanted. You came to me, you brought your conspiracy to me. You know, I thought it was a good idea, but it turned out they were not for real.
Right.
They were talking fiction instead of fact.
Right. They were
They
conspiring to entrap me.
They were conspiring to ensnare me in a conspiracy to distribute LSD. They brought that to me.
Wow.
Make a long story short, the judge found me guilty of 5 charges and gave me 5 years each. 25 years in federal prison for a conspiracy that they created and brought to me so they could render me inoperative in their society.
You didn't serve 25 years.
I did 26 months before I got the convictions reversed in the Court of Appeals in San Francisco. And they would, used to be in America, you didn't have to go to jail until you've exhausted all your legal remedies. If you took your case to the Supreme Court, you were allowed to be considered innocent until proven guilty at the highest level.
Right.
Well, they wouldn't give me that privilege. They put a $50,000 appeal bond on my head, knowing full well I don't have any money. Made it impossible for me not to go to prison, and I shouldn't have gone until after the ultimate outworking of the case, because ultimately I was, what do you call,
yeah, you were found not
innocent.
guilty and innocent,
Yeah.
and you already served
26
time.
months. But I had a good time there. I took the kingdom of heaven in with me, and it wasn't long before there was a number of people reading this book and enjoying the fact that they were in prison and had the opportunity to find it.
Wow.
Anyhow,
You wanted to read the Queen's
official protest.
official protest.
See, this is a very important thing, having to do with the reinstatement of the Kingdom of Hawaii, because the only reason it had to be reinstated is because it was overthrown and was forced into exile.
Right.
In 1893. So this official protest of the treaty says, I, Lili'uokalani Kalani of Hawaii, by the will of God, named heir apparent on the 10th day of April, 1877, and by the grace of God, Queen of the Hawaiian Islands on the 17th day of January, 1893, do hereby protest against the ratification of a certain treaty, which, so I am informed, has been signed at Washington by Messrs. Hatch, Thurston, and Kinney, purporting to cede those islands to the territory and dominion of the United States. I declare such a treaty to be an act of wrong toward the native and part native people of Hawaii, an invasion of the rights of the ruling chiefs, in violation of international rights both toward my people and toward friendly nations with whom they have made treaties, the perpetuation of the fraud whereby the constitutional government was overthrown, and finally, an act of gross injustice to me.
So, where was this filed? Or where was it?
She handed it to the head of the Justice Department, if I remember right, or the president himself.
Okay.
Because the official protests made by me on the 17th day of January 1893 to the so-called provisional government was signed by me and received by said government with the assurance that the case was referred to the United States of America for arbitration.
Well, that's different than we've ever heard.
Now, this is about how she yielded to avoid bloodshed. Because that protest and my communications to the United States government immediately thereafter expressly declare that I yielded my authority to the forces of the United States in order to avoid bloodshed, and because I recognized the futility of a conflict with so formidable a power.
Right.
Because the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, and an envoy commissioned by them in official documents that my government was unlawfully coerced by the forces, diplomatic and naval, of the United States. That I was, at the date of their investigations, the constitutional ruler of my people. Because such decision of the recognized magistrates of the United States was officially communicated to me and to Sanford B. Dole, and to Dole's resignation requested by Albert S. Willis, who the recognized agent and minister of the government of the United States.
I think, just, I look at this and I think, how more than a century later can we reconcile this?
That's what we're involved in.
And how do we...
Sharing the facts and the truth with the people.
Right. And how do we move from here? Which should be interesting to hear how Nelson Armitage and Henry Noah explain their transition, and how these things come out to the people that are here and inhabiting this place. And that's why the reason I'm asking is title companies, real estate title companies, which have been signing as fact, right?
Yep.
Ownership of land in Hawaii for so very long. I mean,
stolen property.
that's what I mean.
It's all stolen property.
How do you deal with that?
Well, the fraud. See, the fraud, the United States government itself is nothing more nor less than an ongoing criminal enterprise.
Well,
And Hawaii is one of the major thefts of a nation. They went from the east coast of America all the way out to here, and they didn't get there righteously. They fought and killed and murdered and maimed and poisoned people from the east coast to the west coast.
so how do we now
Make it right.
make it right?
By recognizing the truth that we're all sons and daughters of God, recognizing the fact that God's our Father, and we're all brothers and sisters. And this is a fact and truth of life, that we can live and enjoy the reality of it in our daily experience.
Well, I don't understand. The part that I don't understand is, I got that, but is that as our spiritual side? No, the Kingdom of Hawaii has a physical experience.
The Kingdom of Hawaii is a political reality. It's a political reality. The Kingdom of Heaven is a spiritual reality.
Okay, right. So
now the reinstatement, the bringing out of exile of the Kingdom of Hawaii was in response to the publishing of U.S. Public Law 103-150.
right, that considered the apology bill.
The so-called apology bill, which they apologized supposedly in black and white, but the apology wasn't honest nor sincere. Let me ask you this. If somebody steals your horse and takes it down the road, and you find out, and they bring him back and say, hey, well, we stole your horse and we're sorry, but they don't give it back. Wouldn't you, if you stole somebody's horse and you felt bad about it afterwards, wouldn't you want to give them the horse back if you were honest and sincere in your apology?
I don't know. Maybe I ate the horse.
Well,
I mean, or
There's a better analogy.
I'm just trying to figure out, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're so many years past the point of physical wrongdoing. How to reconcile here,
Right.
100+ years later, and not create a war over physical territory.
Well, Jesus said many times that the recognition of truth is what will set you free. So you want to be free of all your misconceptions, misinterpretations, misunderstandings of everything that you've been exposed to during the course of your lifetime or anybody's. Then if you want to decide, you know, hey, all the things I've been believing all my life, have they been facts? Or did somebody give me a Santa Claus story that I believe to be true? Fact or fiction has to do with reality and unreality.
I'm wondering about the physical reality of how to do this. I mean, I think that's the biggest...
It's a communications problem, basically. The people of the world have the foggiest idea of that which they need most to know. Here's a challenge. I was talking with my friends earlier about how could we get to people like the owners of Google, the guys that started Google, or Mark, what's his name, that started Facebook. Mm-hmm. Here are these guys, gazillionaires, young men, real young people. And I asked, well, do they have they have access to all kinds of information and supercomputers? Would they be able to pull out of their mass reservoir that which the world needs most to know? For example, if we want world peace, if we want group survival instead of group extinction, is there something in their computer bank that could reveal to man that which man needs most to know? And what is it? What would that happen to be? What is it that man would happen to know or need to know that he doesn't know and doesn't understand? And that's the simple fact of sonship with God.
He has to live it, not just talk about it.
Well, first you have to be exposed to the fact that it exists. We're born into it.
That's why we're here together.
We're born on a planet that has been the victim of planetary rebellion. And the planetary rebellion that I'm speaking of took its origin on this planet 200,000 years ago.
Okay.
So the evolutionary development of life and civilization on our world has been the victim of a lot of unfortunate things that have taken place in our past from our spiritual leadership. And everybody's heard of Lucifer, and our planetary prince got caught up in what was known as the Lucifer Rebellion a couple 100,000 years ago. And all of a sudden our planet was isolated, quarantined, all communications lines cut off, and we're
on our own?
We don't have any visible spiritual leadership at all. Adam and Eve were the last ones, and they were supposed to still be here. They came about 38,000 years ago, and they were supposed to still be here, but they failed in their mission. The consequence was the planet continued under the darkness of rebellion, and the so-called devil, the planetary prince who went into rebellion against the will of God, didn't make things easy for anybody, and Adam and Eve came about 38,000 years ago and defaulted on their mission after about a little over 100 and some years, and only almost a couple thousand children. They were supposed to have hundreds of thousands of children to inbreed with all the races of the people of the world as biological uplifters.
Wow.
And that never happened because they defaulted on their mission, and as a consequence of their mistake, they were reduced to the status of mortals and died. physical death after a little over 500 years of life.
What was their mistake? What did they do?
The mistake made was a violation of their agreement not to have any offspring with the inhabitants of the planet until after they had something like, I don't know, they had so many of their own children on Earth. I had to look in the book to answer that question specifically.
Okay.
But
So,
the mistake made was Eve was impatient. Eve was impatient with the progress of the kingdom. They were isolated from all of their kind. Our planet was isolated. They had no communications with outside worlds. So here they are, the superhuman rulers of our planet, cut off from the outside universe, and on a world that's been retarded by the influence of the rebel planetary prince and his staff.
who's Lucifer?
No, Caligastia. Lucifer was he was the super administrator. He was the sovereign of a system, a local system of inhabited worlds, and 600 and some inhabited worlds. He was the sovereign administrator of the worlds. The planetary.
So many of these people think of the worlds as this world. So 650 worlds is by itself a little bit of a stretch concept. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So,
these are the inevitable consequences. The ignorance of these things is the consequences of the fact of the rebellion having reduced us to status.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That is the point.
Yeah.
That the reason we're in the dark is because it was by design, because we were cut off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't want the disease to spread.
So not even give us the capacity to learn or understand.
Keep it confined to the planets involved, you dig?
Wow.
So, to make these wrongs of the past right, Melchizedek showed up on the scene after Adam and Eve defaulted. About 4,000 years ago. From about 38,000 years ago, 35,000, whatever it was, to 4,000 years ago, there was no visible rulership other than the sons and daughters of the offspring of the loyalists that survived the fall of the planetary prince. The loyal members all survived and had offspring.
Those words are interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Planetary prince. Planetary prince meaning Lucifer.
Well, no,
Not Caligastia.
he was a sovereign, not a planetary prince. He's the sovereign of a system of worlds. A planetary prince is the sovereign of a single world.
Okay.
So Lucifer is the sovereign of the sovereign planetary princes of the inhabited worlds.
These are big concepts, Jim. There's a lot to be learned. You can see why we want a call-in talk show and why there's so much to digest. You know, a lot of people, a number of them Christians, have told me they've been very encouraged to know that there's more to know. They figured there was something in the Bible that really deserved closer inspection and looking at. And as I've come to understand, it's the life and teachings of Jesus, and this refocus on the teachings and what he came to say, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood and sonship of man, is so important. There's different how we study his life, and that's the Christian thing that we know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we do these shows. There is so much going on here and so much information. 650 worlds. I mean, that alone, wrapping
Yeah.
awareness. Those are 650 worlds that have inhabitants that are in this zone.
In our local system.
Catch that?
There are 10,000 local systems in one local universe. And our older brother Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace now, he's also the sovereign creator of our local universe. Nebadon is the name of our universe. So there are 10,000 local systems in the universe of Nebadon.
How much of this do these people really need to know? I mean, like myself, I know there's a lot in the book, and you've really been a student of it for a long time, but I like to boil it down to what can we apply, and where and what can make our world a better place for us all.
The more facts we know, the better we can understand everything. If we're given essentially all the facts about everything so that we can understand everything, then we're free of our ignorance, we're free of our superstitions, we're free of our immaturity, and our so forth and so on. So like, what I'm saying is the more facts we have, the better we can understand everything in the situation. So like, it should make it pretty easy to understand. If the people of the world, in the words of Jesus, were to discover what they need most to know, see, then they would have identified themselves as a cosmic citizen, so to speak. Jesus, on his 16th appearance after his resurrection to a small group of apostles and believers, amongst other things, he said, "That which the world needs most to know is men are the sons of God, and through faith they can actually realize and daily experience this ennobling truth." So it gives you a good thought seed to plant in your mind garden and become part of your soul. And you can feel it with your mind, you can feel it with your spirit. It's true. It'll ring your truth bell. You are a son or a daughter of God. That's a fact. And the truth you can discover by accepting the fact as true and living the truth as a consequence. The idea is love is the rule in the kingdom of God, in the kingdom of heaven. Let me say this. The kingdom of God is at hand, meaning a return to that high spiritual concept of Jesus, who proclaimed that the kingdom is the will of his heavenly Father, dominant and transcendent in the heart of the believer. Now that which the world needs most to know is we're all sons and daughters of God. So the kingdom of God is at hand, the kingdom of God is within. The kingdom of heaven is the outward working out of the inner spiritual reality. If we externalize the love and the truth that's within us with one another, be sharing God with one another, sharing love, sharing truth, is sharing God with one another. And there are divine parents, so it's well that we should. The better we can know our parents, the more we can love them. And the better we understand what they've done for us, the more appreciative and grateful and thankful we can be. So we would be inclined to want to make the most of what we've inherited as a consequence of being sons and daughters of God on this world.
So do we expect some kind of event to change consciousness, or is this a long continuum?
Well, back, I think it was 1973, maybe 1974, I went over to Honolulu and had a meeting with the religion editor for this Honolulu Star Bulletin, a lady named Nadine Scott.
Okay.
And I talked to her about, and this was before the Saturday movement had gotten out very far. Anyhow, I was talking to this lady about Hawaii becoming the capital of a new form of world government. of the people, by the people, and for the people of the world. Jesus reveals elsewhere in his book, when he was in Iran, when Jesus was teaching in Iran, amongst other things, the most important thing he said was, the planetary sovereignty of representative mankind government will bring lasting peace on earth. And the spiritual brotherhood of man will forever ensure goodwill among all men. And there is no other way whereby peace on earth and goodwill among men can be realized.
Do we get that?
So now, how do we get from there to where we ought to be? It has to do with a global constitutional convention hosted by the Kingdom of Hawaii. See, when the facts are recognized and the truth is acknowledged, the United States government has no choice whatsoever except to leave Hawaii gracefully and graciously. In the state of Hawaii, just evaporate, transmute, morph into service in the Kingdom of Hawaii. The lawful Hawaiian government, not the illegal government. The lawful Hawaiian government has been reinstated as a consequence of the Prince of Peace, enabling the passage of Public Law 103-150 because the creator of our universe ruled in favor of the Queen's official protest, which we get back to because it's very significant. Because neither the above-named commission nor the government which sends it has ever received any such authority from the registered voters of Hawaii, but derives its assumed powers from the so-called Committee of Public Safety, organized on or about the 17th day of January 1893, said committee being composed largely of persons claiming American citizenship, and not one single Hawaiian was a member thereof, or in any way participated in the demonstration leading to its existence. Because my people, about 40,000 in number, have in no way been consulted by those 3,000 in number who claim the right to destroy the independence of Hawaii, my people constitute 4/5 of the legally qualified voters of Hawaii, and excluding those imported for the demands of labor, about the same proportion of the inhabitants. Because said treaty ignores not only the civic rights of my people, but further the hereditary property of their chiefs. Of the 4 million acres composing the territory, said treaty offers to annex 1 million, or 915,000 acres, has in no way been heretofore recognized as other than the private property of the constitutional monarch, subject to a control in no way differing from other items of a private estate. Because it is proposed by said treaty to confiscate said property, technically called the Crown lands, those legally entitled thereto, either now or in succession, receiving no consideration whatever for estates, their title to which has been always undisputed, and which is legitimately in my name at this date. Because said treaty ignores not only all professions of perpetual amity and good faith made by the United States in former treaties with the sovereigns representing the Hawaiian people, but all treaties made by those sovereigns with other and friendly powers, and it is thereby in violation of international law.
Wow.
The law of nations.
Well, this is bigger than a bread box.
Even so.
Bigger than our show can address.
We're almost to the end of this here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because by treating with the parties claiming at this time the right to cede said territory of Hawaii, the government of the United States receives such territory from the hands of those whom its own magistrates, legally elected by the people of the United States and in office in 1893, pronounced fraudulently in power and unconstitutionally ruling Hawaii. Therefore, I, PILIWALE of Hawaii, do hereby call upon the President of that nation, to whom alone I yielded my property and my authority, to withdraw said treaty, ceding said islands from further consideration. I ask the Honorable Senate of the United States to decline to ratify said treaty, and I implore the people of this great and good nation, from whom my ancestors learned the Christian religion, to sustain their representatives in such acts of justice and equity as may be in accord with the principles of their fathers, and to the Almighty Ruler of the universe. To him who judgeth righteously, I commit my cause.
So that's your link.
That's the link. That's the link.
Link to the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah. She appealed to him directly. He was in her. The Spirit of truth was in her and with her, even as her will of God, her fragment of God in her. They call them thought adjusters in the Urantia book. They were in her when she filed the official protest with the U.S. government. This whole story of her trip to Washington is in here, and who she met with and who she gave it to, everything. All the details here.
What year was this that this was written by her?
This was written in,
That little thing you just read.
oh, her official protest?
Yeah.
That was June 17th, 1897. Yeah, June 17th, 1897.
So, quote, 4 years after the
Overthrow.
overthrow.
And 2 months before the meeting of the Zionists in Basel, Switzerland, to put the World Zionist Organization together to take over the world.
Wow.
Hawaii was one of the first ones that was a victim of that.
There is, this guy talks about a lot of stuff here. You know, I'm glad we do these shows, you know.
It's fun, I love it. I
And
hope.
what's good is I hope that our audience knows this is created to share something new that Jim knows is important and I've learned is important, and understand that we want you. That's why we want to do a call-in talk show. So I would recommend you keep tuned and watch these and respond out to our email addresses and web addresses, and keep tuned to the media, because we're going to show up somewhere.
Sooner or later.
And we're on
No
YouTube.
question about it.
Right? That's probably, many of you are looking on YouTube right now.
That'd be nice. Aloha.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this today.
Thank you. Another good one.
Another good one. Aloha.